He threw his wife out for being childless, but the next morning, the world discovered her billionaire truth, and his empire began to crumble. What happens when regret comes too late? Before we dive into this powerful story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss more emotional and life-changing stories like this. Also, give this video a like. It'd help us share more with you. Now let's begin our story. The city lights glittered like diamonds scattered across the velvet darkness. And inside the top floor of the glass tower, where the empire of Adrian Blackwell thrived, silence pressed against the walls of a mansion too large to feel like home. A silence only broken by the sound of footsteps pacing in anger. Adrian, the ruthless and sterile CEO of Blackwell Industries, had built his fortune on cold logic and iron control. Yet tonight his fury was directed not at a failing contract or a business rival, but at the woman he once called his wife. Elena, who sat quietly on the cream-colored sofa, her delicate fingers nervously clutching the edge of her dress. Her eyes downcast, but glimmering with unspoken pain, she had married Adrian out of love, believing that beneath the sharp suits, in calculating demeanor, there lived a man who could one day learn to love her back. But Adrian's heart had become a fortress, hardened by ambition and poisoned by the whispers of family and shareholders who constantly reminded him that a man without an heir was a man whose legacy was fragile. And so, when years passed and Elena's womb remained silent, he turned his disappointment into cruelty, his words into daggers that cut her more deeply than any wound. "You are nothing but a failure, Elena," he spat, his voice echoing through the vast living room like thunder. "I needed a wife who could give me a son, a daughter, an heir, but all you have given me is emptiness." His words trembled with venom, and Elena's heart ached, not because she did not want children, but because she had quietly endured endless hospital visits, countless tests, and sleepless nights of prayers only to hear from doctors that her body was fine, that there was no explanation for why life did not bloom within her. But Adrian never believed in fate or miracles. He needed control, certainty, productivity, and in his eyes, Elena had become a barren tree in the garden of his empire. Useless, unwanted, replaceable, tonight his anger reached its peak. Fueled by the mocking laughter of his board members at a recent gala, where someone had dared to joke about Blackwell's lack of an heir, he came home drunk on humiliation. And Elena, who had waited with dinner, hoping for a moment of peace, was met instead with an avalanche of rage. He grabbed her wrist, pulled her up from the sofa, his eyes blazing like fire. "Get out, Elena. You are no wife of mine. You cannot give me what I need, so you are nothing to me." Her lips parted in shock, her chest rising and falling as though her heart might burst. She whispered, her voice trembling, "Adrian, we vowed to stay together in sickness and in health, in every storm." But Adrian's laughter was cruel, empty. "Storms are for those who survive them together. You are drowning me, dragging me down. I will not let my empire suffer because of you. Pack your things and leave. You are finished here." He threw her suitcase onto the floor, already prepared as though he had been waiting for this moment. As though her departure was not a sudden decision, but a calculated exile. Elena's tears fell silently, each one carrying the weight of betrayal. She had given up her own career, her own life, to stand by his side, to be the quiet strength behind his ambition. And this was her reward, rejection like a blade to thee. Heart still, she did not scream or fight. She gathered what little dignity remained, lifted her chin, and whispered, "One day, Adrian, you will regret this, but by then it will be too late." With those words she walked out, the heavy doors of the mansion closing behind her with a sound that echoed like the end of an era. Outside, the cold wind stung her face, but it felt warmer than the icy prison she had just escaped. She stood for a moment staring at the city that glittered like a promise, her mind racing with grief and memories, but somewhere deep inside, a fire that had been long suppressed flickered to life. She remembered who she truly was before she had become Mrs. Blackwell. She remembered the legacy of her late father, the empire she had chosen to walk away from for the sake of love. And though Adrian never knew the full truth, Elena had always been more than a wife, more than a woman defined by her ability to bear children. She was the only daughter of Victor Sterling, a billionaire industrialist whose vast holdings stretched across continents, whose wealth and influence dwarfed even the mighty Blackwell name. She had hidden this identity to live a life of simplicity, to see if someone could love her for who she was and not what she owned. But now, cast aside like nothing, she realized the mask could be dropped, her silence could end. As Adrian sat alone in the cold mansion, convincing himself that he was free of her burden, Elena rode away into the night, her tears slowly drying, replaced by determination, because she knew that the man who had just destroyed her heart would soon learn that the woman he discarded was not a fragile flower, but a storm he could never contain. The night after her exile, Elena Sterling Blackwell sat quietly in the back seat of a sleek black limousine that had come for her the moment she made one call. A call she had not made in years, because she had once promised herself that her past life as the daughter of Victor Sterling would remain buried. But as the car glided through the city streets toward the Sterling estate, she felt the weight of those forgotten promises lift. And in their place came a rising strength. She had lived years in the shadow of a man who believed she was powerless, who measured her worth by the absence of children, who failed to see the fire in her soul. But tonight, she would step back into the world she had turned away from. The world where she was not just Elena, the barren wife, but Elena Sterling, heiress to a dynasty built on steel, technology, and global influence. When the limousine passed through the wrought iron gates of the Sterling mansion, guards in tailored suits bowed their heads with respect, the staff lined up, their eyes filling with tears at the sight of their lady returning. It had been so long since they had seen her. And yet the reverence was the same. Elena walked into the marble halls where portraits of her ancestors loomed high, and the memory of her father's deep voice echoed in her heart, reminding her of the legacy she had almost abandoned. Her Aunt Miranda, a powerful businesswoman herself, rushed forward and embraced her, whispering, "Child, we always knew you would return. We waited for the day when you remembered who you are." Elena's tears returned, but these were different. Not tears of rejection, but of belonging, of rediscovering the identity she had once hidden. For years she had let Adrian believe she was just an ordinary woman. She had suppressed her wealth, her name, her connections, because she wanted to be loved simply, not worshipped or used. But Adrian had shown her that he did not value her at all, and so now there was nothing left to hide. The next morning, the Sterling family boardroom filled with executives, shareholders, and legal advisors, all of them looking to Elena, the rightful heiress. For direction, she stood at the head of the long table, her posture regal, her voice calm yet commanding, as she announced her intention to step into her rightful role. "I will no longer remain in silence while others define me by what I lack. I have spent years away, but now I will lead this empire, not just because it is my inheritance, but because it is my duty." The room erupted in applause. Loyalists who had longed for her leadership felt renewed hope. The press was alerted. Headlines spread like wildfire. "Elena Sterling returns heiress, takes over Sterling Global Holdings." And suddenly, the same city that had seen her as Adrian's fragile wife now saw her for the titan she truly was. Within days, her photographs graced magazine covers, her speeches about women's strength, resilience, and redefining legacy went viral. Adrian Blackwell, sitting in his office high above Blackwell Tower, nearly choked when his assistant placed the morning newspaper in front of him, his eyes widening as he saw Elena's face staring back with confidence beneath the headline that screamed her billionaire status. Disbelief twisted his features. He muttered, "This can't be Elena Sterling." He remembered the whispers at their wedding, how a few of the wealthy elite had smirked knowingly, but he had dismissed it. Thinking they were jealous of him, he never imagined the quiet woman he had discarded was heir to a fortune that could eclipse his own. Fury boiled inside him, mixed with regret and fear, because he realized in one brutal moment that he had not only lost a wife, but he had humiliated and betrayed the one person who could have secured his empire's future in ways he never dreamed. Still, Adrian's pride refused to let him admit defeat. He called his boardroom together, barking orders, insisting that Blackwell Industries would remain untouchable. But in the shadows, his allies whispered they had seen the headlines too. They had seen the stock prices rise for Sterling Global while Blackwell Industries slipped. They wondered if Adrian had made the greatest mistake of his life. Elena, meanwhile, did not waste her energy on revenge. Not yet. Her focus was on reclaiming her life. She launched new initiatives under the Sterling name, programs that empowered women, supported orphans, and funded fertility research. Not because she needed to prove anything, but because she understood pain. She knew the sting of being called useless. She wanted to create a world where no woman would suffer as she had suffered. Her compassion, combined with her brilliance, made her beloved across the city. Journalists described her as a phoenix rising from ashes. Social media flooded with messages of admiration. And in just months, her influence grew so powerful that even governments sought her counsel. But beneath the surface, there was still a part of her heart that ached. Because despite everything Adrian had done, she had once loved him, truly loved him, and part of her still grieved for the man he could have been. Yet every time she remembered his cruel words, his cold eyes, she straightened her back and reminded herself that he was the author of his own downfall. Adrian, however, was unraveling. His empire, once so stable, began to fracture as investors pulled back. Seeing Sterling Global as the brighter future, his reputation suffered, and whispers spread about his cruelty. Rumors that he had discarded his wife like trash. Rumors Elena never confirmed nor denied, allowing the truth to speak for itself. At night, Adrian sat alone in his mansion, staring at the empty rooms. Haunted by memories of Elena's quiet presence, the way she used to wait for him with dinner, the gentle smile she gave him even when he was cold, he began to realize that her silence had never been weakness. It had been strength, and the absence of her love felt like an unhealable wound. But his pride would not let him seek her out. Not yet. Instead, he drowned himself in whiskey, trying to ignore the truth. But the woman he had cast aside was not only thriving without him, but was now more powerful than he could ever hope to be. And the world was watching, waiting for the day when their paths would collide again, when Adrian Blackwell, the man who believed he could control everything, would finally be forced to bow before the woman he had underestimated. Months passed like fleeting shadows, and the city that once bowed at the feet of Adrian Blackwell now whispered about his decline. His empire, once the embodiment of strength, was collapsing under the weight of poor decisions, disloyal board members, and vanishing investors, who now flocked to Sterling Global, where Elena stood like a beacon of hope, her elegance commanding admiration, her compassion winning loyalty. Adrian watched helplessly as the markets betrayed him, his fortune bleeding day by day, and for the first time in his life, the man who had believed he could bend the world to his will felt powerless. At night, his empty mansion suffocated him, the silence screaming Elena's absence. Every glass of whiskey only fueling the fire of regret, until one evening, broken and weary, he admitted to himself the truth he had denied. He loved her not because of her billions, not because of her name, but because in losing her, he had discovered the void inside himself. A void no empire, no heir, no wealth could fill. She had been his light, and he had extinguished it with his arrogance. Meanwhile, Elena, though thriving, carried scars invisible to the world. Every smile she gave in public hid the echo of those cruel words that had banished her from her home. Every success reminded her of the sacrifice of love she once believed was eternal. And though she no longer shed tears for Adrian, there were nights she stood at her window, gazing at the same city's skyline, wondering if he ever thought of her. Fate, however, is cruel and poetic, and their worlds were destined to collide again. It began when Blackwell Industries announced bankruptcy protection. The once mighty empire crumbling in full view of the world, headlines mocked Adrian, investors abandoned him completely. And in desperation, he found himself walking into a ballroom where Sterling Global was hosting a gala to raise funds for women-led startups. The irony nearly crushed him, but pride gave way to desperation. He needed help, he needed her, and as he entered, the crowd parted, whispers rising. all eyes fixed on the man who had once been untouchable, now walking with a broken gait toward the woman who glowed under chandeliers like a queen reborn. Elena stood at the center of admirers, dressed in an emerald gown that shimmered with every step, her beauty radiant, her aura untouchable. When her eyes finally met his across the room, silence fell. Memories flooded them both. Adrian's throat tightened as he whispered her name, Elena. She raised an eyebrow, her smile calm but sharp as glass. Adrian, what a surprise. I didn't expect to see you here. His lips trembled as he struggled for words. The man who once roared commands now spoke like a beggar. I came because I need to say what I should have said long ago. I was wrong, Elena. I was blinded by pride, by ambition. I let the pressure of others poison me, and I hurt you in ways I can never take back. The room grew tense, every ear listening. Adrian's voice broke as he confessed. You were never a failure, I was. Because I failed to see the gift I had. I failed to see you, and when I lost you, I lost everything that mattered. Tears shimmered in his eyes, a sight no one had ever seen from the ruthless CEO. Elena studied him quietly, her heart twisting with emotions she thought long buried. She had dreamed of this moment once, the moment he would regret, but standing here now, powerful and whole, she realized that regret was not enough. Love was not a currency to be spent only when convenient. She took a slow breath and said softly yet firmly, Adrian, I gave you all. Of me, I stood by you in storms. I believed in you, even when you could not believe in me. And you cast me aside like I was nothing. Not because of who I was, but because of what I could not give. You measured me by my womb, not by my heart, and that is something I can never forgive. Adrian's knees weakened, the crowd around them watching the fall of a giant. He reached for her hand, desperation etched in every line of his face. Please, Elena, I know I don't deserve it, but give me one chance. Not for my company, not for money, but for us. Because I love you. I love you in a way I was too blind to admit before. Elena gently withdrew her hand, her voice steady. I don't doubt that you feel regret, Adrian, but love is not proven by words spoken in ruin. It is proven by actions when everything is strong. When life is easy, when staying is harder than leaving, and you failed that test, you left me when I needed you most. And though I will always wish you healing, I cannot go back to being the woman you once broke. Her words cut through the silence like thunder. Adrian's tears finally fell, his shoulders trembling, the once proud man now shattered before the woman he thought he had discarded forever. Elena turned gracefully, addressing the audience, her poise unshaken. Let tonight be a reminder that strength is not found in what the world demands of us, but in what we choose to rise above. Applause thundered, drowning Adrian's sobs. And as she walked away, her heart ached, but also soared. For she knew she had reclaimed not only her power, but her dignity. Adrian staggered out of the ballroom. Into the night, the city lights mocking him. He had everything once, yet he lost it all chasing the idea of legacy. Only to learn too late that his true legacy could have been the love of a woman who would have stood beside him forever. But regret cannot rewrite the past. And so Adrian Blackwell, once the untouchable CEO, lived on as a man haunted by the memory of the wife he had thrown away, while Elena Sterling, the heiress who rose from rejection, continued to build an empire of hope, her name etched not only in fortune, but in the hearts of millions. The final irony being that the man who cast her aside for being childless had created a world where her legacy gave life to thousands, and his name once feared became nothing more than a cautionary tale of a king who lost his crown because he never learned to cherish his queen.